All right, last question. Nerdy D, can Nia Jax survive and handle the weight of being a world champion if she does indeed win at Crown Jewel? Look, here's the thing. I think that Nia Jax has been a serviceable heel since she's returned back to WWE. She's had moments that show what she could be and what she should have always been as far as being a monster heel, but the nights where they hand her a microphone and she starts to talk, it kind of breaks the illusion for me of what she should be. And it's not Nia Jax's fault. I don't think it's her fault. I think it's WWE's fault for putting her in situations where she's forced to talk and address other wrestlers and address the crowd, especially Rhea Ripley. There's a potential to do something special with Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley. But in order to do that, in order for that to work, WWE has to understand the skill sets that each one of those women have. Nia Jax can be intimidating, especially when she's not talking. Less is more. It's the same thing we said about Ronda Rousey. Sometimes just standing there and a look is all someone needs to come off as intimidating. When she starts to whine and she starts to talk and try to explain herself, she loses value. Someone who is intimidating like Nia Jax does not need to whine and does not need to explain themselves. So if Nia Jax does win the title at Crown Jewel, I think that her reign needs to be on the extreme side of being a heel. Lots of cheating, lots of underhanded tactics, more kind of laughing than promos, less talking, just maniacal kind of evil. Make Rhea Ripley have to work to get back to the title picture. Here's an issue that was glaringly obvious to me after watching Monday Night Raw this week. Rhea Ripley at some point in the last year skipped past the idea that she was going to be a star and decided, I'm going to be a mega star now. I'm going to be a supernova. And that's not just from the fans' perspective, because she gets phenomenal pops when she comes to the ring, but also it's because of how good she has become in every facet of pro wrestling. Now, I might be overreacting a little bit, but I think that Rhea Ripley has surpassed all of the other women in WWE with microphone skills. I don't think there's any woman in the WWE that is better on a microphone than Rhea Ripley. And while I say a lot of Raw feels overacted and forced, Rhea Ripley's clean in her delivery. Very CM Punkish, very real. There's a lot of raw emotion when she talks. So if you don't want to make Nia stand in the ring and go word to word with Rhea Ripley, what you do is you almost have Nia Jax ignore what Rhea's saying. And I would say that when we talk about Rhea Ripley, the other point that I want to make is I think she's become as good in the ring as far as X's and O's go that I think that there's nobody better. And I'm not going to say she's the best, but I think there's nobody better. I don't think technically anybody's better. So once again, you don't want to put Nia Jax into a position where she has to be technical. So and lastly, as far as looks go, I think that the problem for Nia Jax is she's intimidating when she's standing across the ring from almost everybody except Rhea Ripley. So what I'm talking about here, when you take all those things into consideration, Nia Jax needs to be booked as a squirmy, sneaky, nasty heel against Rhea Ripley. It's the only way it works. It's the only way it benefits Rhea Ripley long term is to have to achieve past all of the odds. If Nia Jax wins at Crown Jewel and you start sticking a microphone in her hand week after week, the crowd is going to lose patience. She's not going to be able to get over the way you want her to. So what you do is you have her win and you just have her continue to be dominant. But here's a bigger concern that I have at this point. And this goes outside of the control of WWE and outside the control of Rhea Ripley. But I think Rhea Ripley has outgrown the Judgment Day. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear that, but all this secret meeting bullshit and taking care of Damian Priest and doing work for Finn Balor, that's really become a waste of time and talent as far as Rhea Ripley goes. I think that Rhea Ripley needs to be 100% committed to the women's division because she can and I think will end up being the greatest women's wrestler of all time. I say that with a lot of confidence. The things I see in her ability and in the way she's progressed in such a short amount of time, I think right now I could make the argument that she already is and kind of become the new big deal. But I definitely can see in the next 5 years that Rhea Ripley is the biggest thing in women's wrestling. And I will give credit to the Judgment Day for that. The Judgment Day has showcased her for the last year, but I just think at this point she's become bigger than the faction. She should keep Dom. I'm not going to say that she should get rid of Dominic Mysterio because I think Dom is the perfect sidekick to Rhea Ripley. Honestly, if I'm booking WWE, I never split them up. I think that forever I keep Dom and Rhea together. I treat them kind of like Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth, and I make them a pair that is iconic throughout wrestling history. But speaking of Dom, let's take a little side trip here. Speaking of Dom, I want to sidetrack a little bit to address the IWC and how all of a sudden it's become cool as shit to jump on shitting on Dominic Mysterio's. Because I've always been someone who's been extremely critical of Dominic, but I like to believe that I've always been truthful and I've always been fair. The IWC all of a sudden thinks it's cool just to shit on Dominic Mysterio because somebody did some research and found out that they're pumping in crowd noise when he grabs a microphone. We've known this. This is not new news. And like this idea that theatrics in wrestling are a problem, like where do you draw the line? Do you have a problem when Shotzi comes out and fires a fake missile out of her tank? We don't, I mean, it's cringy, but it's part of wrestling, right? Kane used to summon fire. The Undertaker buried people in caskets and could shoot lightning. Like, so what? They pump some crowd noise in and the IWC loses their shit. That's where you draw the line. The difference to me is acknowledging that something is happening. We know it's happening and losing your shit over it. These guys who, they got to stop. This is over the top. Sure, like make a comment and then move on. The fact that you dwell on it week after week, that is how I define people who are the IWC. The IWC needs to look at the rest of the internet. There are people who genuinely believe that Dominic Mysterio is getting this heat. So by all logic, WWE, their tactics are working. There are people who believe this is real. And I get mislabeled all the time as the Dominic Mysterio hater. And I call bullshit on that. I'm truthful and I'm objective. I think that Dominic Mysterio is a great wrestling character. I think that he is a mid-card dream. He won't be a world champion unless they make drastic changes to him. And I think that he's a very likable person outside the ring. I think that's all fair and objective. I don't think that I'm being overly critical. I don't think that I'm talking shit about the way they pump in crowd noise or the way they book him. But if you look at the Judgment Day, I would say at this point, it's done its job. It did better than most factions do. Rhea Ripley was elevated to a megastar. Damian Priest has become a main eventer. Dominic Mysterio has solidified himself on the mid-card. I would argue that maybe Finn Balor is the only one who didn't increase his standing in the WWE, but then I'd argue that the Judgment Day has allowed him to show a lot of personality that a lot of us hadn't seen from Finn Balor. So I won't argue that the Judgment Day has to break up, but I think it's time at least for a shakeup or a new purpose or just a change in direction. The Cody Rhodes, the Sami Zayn, the Super Friends, that's all kind of run its course. It's time to either let JD McDonough into the group or don't let him into the group. It's time to stop teasing that. It's time to let Rhea Ripley start focusing on the women's division. It's time to get the tag team titles off of Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And I'd argue that it really is time to get Damian Priest out of the group and let him stand on his own 2 feet and see that if he can really swim in the main event pool. But as it stands, I think a lot of my issues with Monday Night Raw stem from the Judgment Day, stem from seeing the same shit week after week after week. It's just the Judgment Day over and over and over again. And unless there's a shakeup, I don't foresee my opinion changing in the near future.